Welcome to 28 Days and Beyond, where we're celebrating our history, our heritage, our culture, and our own authentic voice. And today, we have with us on the set is Brian. Welcome to the set, Brian.
Thank you for letting me be here.
You got a pretty interesting, diverse background. So, Brian, give people a snapshot of who you are and what you do.
Currently, I'm General Counsel and Corporate Secretary for an organization by the name of Resources for Human Development. It's a national nonprofit that provides health and human services for individuals across the country, mostly the most vulnerable in society, most disregarded, people with mental and physical disabilities, people returning from prison, returning veterans, drug and alcohol offenders, and even sexual offenders.
Wow. What made you get into that? I mean, how was you able to get into that field?
Well, I've been practicing law for about 23 years, and
Okay.
my main focus is civil rights. I started out with the EEOC as a trial attorney, preacher's kid too, so
Okay.
I always looked out for the best in people. Went from the EEOC in-house to Sunoco, which is a little different.
Yeah.
But then when I had the opportunity to join Resources for Human Development, I jumped at it.
So EEOC, tell people what that stands for.
That stands for Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. It's a federal agency. We had an office here in Philadelphia, but it's all over the country. Their primary mission is to attempt to eradicate discrimination in the workplace. Litigated hundreds of cases on behalf of the federal government.
So you say you're a civil attorney, right?
Civil rights, yeah.
Civil rights attorney. What is it just because I know we got some other stuff people are chopping at the bit at. So what are some of the cases you tried when it comes to that employment discrimination and what you have found out?
Not a problem. I did a number of racial harassment cases, class action cases, a number of sexual harassment cases, a lot of disability discrimination cases, some religious discrimination cases, a few pregnancy discrimination cases. But my main focus was typically racial and sexual harassment. I worked for the EEOC from 1993 when I got out of law school until 2001.
Now, do you find out, because I'm asking this question for me, but I know other people like this question too. Do you find out that black offendants or defendants, do they sue more or less in comparison to our counterparts, or we just take more on from your experience?
That's a great question. The dip in the economy around 2008 till 2013, you saw everyone filing claims for discrimination. Everybody was hurting.
Everybody hurt.
So there was no disparity in the numbers. I mean, society is, it's only 20 million African Americans and a lot of other non-African Americans, but the number of individuals filing charges, the percentages were pretty much the same.
Wow.
During boom times, you see more individuals who would probably be considered the highly vulnerable filing more charges.
How much charges?
Right.
So what are some of the current social, I know a couple things that's dear to your heart, that, and who you represent when it comes to civil rights, or these social influences or concurrence or head-on that's happening right now that you'd like to expound on?
Well, I teach at Temple also.
Oh, yeah.
And I've been doing that for the last 9 years. And I teach a course titled Intro to Law.
Okay.
And typically it's individuals in the Fox School of Business who have as a major hospitality and tourism. And one part of my course deals with public accommodation and discrimination in public accommodation. And I just taught that course a couple of weeks ago, and the primary focus my students wanted to talk about was privileges versus racism, and how the distinction may exist. And what we discovered was that privileges typically deal with non-intentional activity. They're actually bestowed on someone. It's an advantage that's given to someone, not necessarily because of something they've done, but because of society's belief or society's thoughts about them. For instance, the privileges that you typically look at are white privilege. And racism itself usually involves an intentional act by someone. And society right now is less tolerant of the term racism.
Yeah.
they're more tolerant of the term privileges and the fact that some privileges bestowed on individuals because of their race and not necessarily because of what they've actually done is more accepted discussion points. So my class really felt that, some privileges that exist between the races, for instance, some subtle things like going into a drugstore and being able to buy a Band-Aid that fits your complexion. Being able to run down the street if you're white, not be considered that you are being chased by someone or chasing someone, whereas if you're black, you're looking around to see who's chasing you and whether or not someone should call the police. These are like subtle privileges that can result in some dislike between the races. So we talked about that a lot.
So let me ask you this, because people thought Obama got elected, President Barack Obama got elected, and they think we was beyond racism, which I don't know how they ever came to that conclusion. And the other thing you hear is black people are racist. I want you to dive deep into that one. Those two things, because I hear that a lot. Reverse racism now.
Right. Yeah. Well, I actually had a couple of cases like that where I had a white client who was suing on the basis that they felt they were being treated unfairly due to their race in a predominantly black workforce.
Okay.
And it's just racism. The law, Civil Rights Act of 1964, does not distinguish amongst the race, between the races. The law says if you're unfairly treated because of your race, you're protected and you can sue. It was created and enacted because of the historical poor actions or discriminatory actions against African Americans, but it's not written that way. So if you really read the law, it says that no matter what your race, you can bring suit. So it's not reverse, it's just discrimination. And I will fight that anytime I get a chance to. But we've had many cases when I was with the EEOC where an African American was suing another African American. And unfortunately, it's tied to complexion, which, I talked about this the other night in my class, and the case of Brown versus Board of Education, which was a case that was decided in 1954, the case that basically landmark case pushing forward the civil rights movement, that era civil rights movement, involved African American children wanting to go to a white school. And part of that case, which was tried by, or argued by Thurgood Marshall at the time, who was the lead attorney for the NAACP, part of that case involved using this test, this doll test called the Kenneth Clark doll test. The Kenneth Clark doll test took African American kids, white kids, and gave them dolls, or put before them dolls that were of different colors. And this test was done around 1939, early 40s, but used in 1954 by Thurgood Marshall to show that segregation had as a result creation of an inferiority complex by the black kids. Because what they saw during the test was that when you put the black doll in front of the kids, no matter what their color, black or white, the black dolls were decided to be bad, ugly, or mean. And this was both the white kids and the black kids making this distinction. So they felt that, or the court agreed that that type of segregation, solely because of color, could create this inferiority complex, and thereby felt that the case integration should be the law of the land. And so I say all that, get back to your original question. We have in our society a distinction amongst the races based upon some inherently improper thought process. We looked at they did the same study in 2012 with black and white kids and some Mexican kids, some Asian kids, and some other foreign kids. And they did the same study where they brought forth these black dolls and these white dolls, and the same conclusions were reached. 60 years after integration had been made the law of the land, these same results were occurring, that the black kids, the white kids, the Asian kids, the Latino kids were all saying the black dolls are mean, the black dolls are ugly, the black dolls are bad. And these are 4-year-olds to 7-year-old kids. And how can they reach that conclusion when we've had such an integrated society for the last 60 years? So there's something needs to be done. I mean, I try to teach my children, I have 4 kids, the value of self-worth.
Yeah.
And that your worth is not tied to your color. It's
Yeah.
tied more to your soul or your inner being, your integrity, what you present to the world. And I try to teach that to my students as well. So.
Well, look, man, we have ran out of time.
I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. I have 4 more on the clip for you, man. I want to get to the over thing. We're going to bring you back. But what are some ways people get in contact with you quickly?
I am, well, at RHD.
Yeah.
We have our own website, www.rhd.org. I'm also Facebook.
Okay.
I'm old, so I don't have a whole lot of Twitter and all that other stuff, but by email and by phone. So.
Okay. Hey, we appreciate you coming to set. Hey, thank you once again for tuning in with 28 Days in Virginia. We celebrate our history, our heritage, and our culture in our own authentic voice. And we really enjoyed Brian coming to the set today. And thanks for coming to the set, Brian. Thanks, man.
Thank you for having me.
Really good, man.